If a watch needs a designer, then surely the universe and everything in it does too. Paley thought that proved God, but Hume wasn't having it. Welcome to Untangle Philosophy. Today, we'll explain whether Paley's watch analogy works, or if Hume destroyed it. David Hume, the 18th century philosopher, takes aim at design arguments in his dialogues concerning natural religion, a text so controversial it wasn't published until after his death. William Paley's book, meanwhile, brought comfort to people's beliefs by reinforcing the tidy explanation for the apparent purpose and complexity in living things and the universe. God did it, but is this really so tidy? If design explains the world, Hume asks, what explains the designer? And what explains that designer? Suddenly you're in an infinite loop, not an explanation. For Hume, design arguments fail because they create an unacceptable infinite regress. But that's not all. Hume's writing attacks Paley's most famous idea. Paley insists that if a watch needs a watchmaker to explain its complexity and purpose, then nature needs an intelligent designer. But Hume sets out to destroy the very idea of using analogies to prove God. What makes an analogy successful? Well, there needs to be similarity between what is being compared. A human heart and an animal heart? Fair comparison. A tree and a human? Less so. A universe and everything in it? And a watch? Not even close. If I got an old watch out and said to you, this is like a goat, you'd think I was bonkers. Believers tend to claim that God is entirely unique. If so, then by definition, he is not similar to anything at all. Any attempt, therefore, to prove God via analogy is doomed. Further, what would be similar to the universe? No, really, what? But maybe we've gone too far. Alright, suppose you really can find a good analogy for God. Here's the problem. Hume says the real conclusion you end up with isn't the one Paley wants. Imagine you have two old watches. If you conclude that one had a watchmaker, it follows that the other did too. But why is this logic sound? Well, because, as Hume points out, the closer the analogy, the more similar the cause. Here's Paley's problem. If the universe truly is like a watch, and a watch is made by a watchmaker, we just end up with an anthropomorphic, human-like God, who, in some very close way, resembles the watchmaker, inheriting all our emotions and faults and everything else. Not exactly the God Paley is praying to. To resist that conclusion, we have to weaken the analogy. But if we do that, as Hume's already shown, the design argument collapses. Gotcha! But Hume's not done yet. Let's stretch the analogy a little. Say you stumble across a cathedral. Now, a watch suggests a single maker. Sure, it's small. A cathedral? That's multiple builders, architects, plumbers, etc. A universe and everything in it, even more vast, even more complex. Maybe it needs a whole pantheon. Why is the universe and everything in it like a watch and not like a cathedral made by many? Polytheism might not bother some, but when people use the design argument, they usually have one particular chap in mind. Hume never uses cathedrals, of course, in his example, but it makes his point about the limits of analogy. What about flaws in creation? If the cathedral leaks, we blame the builders. If nature floods, burns, and kills, what does that say about its designer? Hume points to natural disasters, tsunamis, hurricanes, and the like, as signs that God might be a bad designer, or at least not omnipotent and omnibenevolent. Paley brushes off this criticism, insisting that even a watch with flaws would still be evidence for a designer, so flaws in nature change nothing. But is this a good response? To be fair, if my watch stopped working, I wouldn't conclude that it must have never had a designer, but it does seem to expose Paley to the problem of evil, because surely, if the watchmaker is responsible for their mistakes, which surely they would be, God would be responsible for the natural disasters in his creation. By the way, if you want to know more about the problem of evil, just search Untangle problem of evil, and look, it's me. Hume concludes that analogies like Paley's ultimately fail because we do not have experience of how universes are made. Hume was an empiricist, so much so that he pointed out we could not be certain the sun would rise tomorrow because we only have experience of it rising in the past, not the future. For Hume, the problem isn't that design arguments are wrong necessarily. It's that they claim to know what is beyond our experience. We've seen watches being made. We've never seen a universe being made. And for Hume, that gap makes all the difference. So Paley wasn't entirely wrong. It's just that analogies can't prove what he wants them to. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe for more or visit untanglephilosophy.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.